welcome back once again to our ongoing series on the glories of our most beloved Sri Vrindavan Dham. Welcome. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Pastaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swaminiti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pachanane Nivishesha Shunyavadi Paschata Deshatarane Shri Guru Karunamaya Bandhuntara Bharadwaya Prema Kalpaturu Varadatta Diksha Mantra Harinama Yahara Amulya Dhana Giba Gabo Tara Gunagata. I bow down to the lotus feet of my spiritual master, who is a wish-fulfilling desire tree of divine love for Krishna, the most munificent benefactor, and he who initiated me into the valuable jewel of the Mahamantra. How can I sufficiently praise his glories? So, to prepare ourselves to welcome Vrindavan into our hearts today, I'd like to share with you a very beautiful description of Vrindavan from the Mathura Kanda section of the Skanda Purana. It's stated there, then there is auspicious Vrindavan, which is always under the shelter of Vrindadevi, where Sri Hari is always present and which is served by the devotees like Brahma and Shiva. Vrindavan is not easily accessible. It is filled with many large ashrams of munis, as well as gardens full of tulsi plants. Just as the ever-devoted Kamala Devi, Lakshmi, is Lord Vishnu's most beloved, so Vrindavan Dham is Lord Govinda's most beloved. Lord Madhava always takes Lord Balarama, the cowherd boys and the cows, to play in Vrindavan Dham. Oh, how lovely is Vrindavan's beauty. There one will find Giriraj Govardhan and many other holy places created by the Lord. Hare Krishna. What a wonderful description of Vrindavan. So, in our last lecture, in our wanderings around Vrindavan, we discussed a number of cowherd boy pastimes that took place in the vicinity of Kamyavan, beautiful Kamyavan. In Brajavilashtava, text number 22, Raghunath Das Goswami glorifies Kamyavan. He says, Yatra Kama Shara Shakshad, Gopika Ramanam Shara, Radha Madha Vayo Prishtam, Tadvanam Kai Makam Bhaje. Let me worship the forest of Kamyavan, which is very dear to Radha and Krishna, and which contains the Kamasarovara lake, where the gopis and Krishna enjoy many transcendental pastimes. Shri Kamyavan Ki. But before moving on to another part of Vrindavan, which was my original intention, I'd like to relate a few more famous cowherd boy pastimes that happened in that same Kamyavan vicinity. Actually, not to mention them would be a great disservice, and it would mean that we would not get a lot of blessings. I found a beautiful verse in Padyavali, it's text number 5, where Rupa Goswami prays, may playful Gopal's flute music, which calls the faraway Surabhi cows by name, which is the mystic mantra that charms the gopis' hearts, and which delights and attracts the deer enjoying in Vrindavan, bless you all. Bless you all. So we need blessings. So to begin with, I want to remind you of something that we mentioned the other day as what kept the cowherd boys busy all the time. You may remember the Acharyas say that was herding cows, playing games, and escaping from demons who came to kill Krishna. Herding cows, playing games, and escaping from demons who come to kill Krishna. That's the life of a cowherd boy. Now at the beginning of chapter 12 of the 10th canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, Shukadev Goswami describes some of the playful activities and games of the Cowherd boys. We get some details here, more details about Braj. He mentions the Cowherd boys would play in waterfalls, imitate the animals they'd seen in the forest. They'd play on their flutes and their bugles. They'd shout, how does he say, ill names down the wells, and pretend to get mad when the insults would come back as echoes. They'd play like monkeys. They'd climb trees. They'd wrestle. And of course, we read so many times how they play ball. Now, after relating all this, I was reading that Shukadeva Goswami voiced his astonishment by saying that the following verse about the Cowherd boys. Quote, "In this way, all the Cowherd boys used to play with Krishna, who is the source of the Brahman effulgence, for Jnanis desiring to merge into that effulgence, who is the Supreme Personality of Godhead for devotees who have accepted eternal servitorship, and for who ordinary persons is but another ordinary child. The Cowherd boys, having accumulated the results of pious activities for many lives, were able to associate in this way with the Supreme Personality of Godhead. How can one explain their good fortune? How can one explain their good fortune?" Now, I was doing some extra reading about Cowherd boys, and I came across a passage where my dear godbrother Shrutikirti Prabhu, who was Prabhupada's servant for quite some time, he describes how one day he was massaging Srila Prabhupada, and then Prabhupada said during the massage, quote, "I like the Cowherd boys very much. Every day Krishna and Balaram would go into the forest of Vrindavan. Before they would go, their mothers would make lunches for them. Krishna's mother, Yashoda, would make very nice tiffin, and in there would be puri, halava, kachori, and ladu. And the other Cowherd boys, their mothers were not so opulent, so their tiffins would have chapati, rice, and sabji." Then Prabhupada continued, "Then they would go and play all day. When they would stop for lunch, sometimes one of the Cowherd boys would steal Krishna's lunch and begin throwing it around. They would play keep away," Prabhupada said to Shrutikirti. They would play keep away with Krishna. Finally, the Cowherd boys would throw their lunches to Krishna, and they would sit down with his lunch, that opulent lunch, and they would eat puri, halava, kachori, and ladu. And Krishna would sit with them, and he would eat the rice, chapati, and sabji. Then Shrutikirti said, "So, Srila Prabhupada paused for a moment. He paused for a moment, and then he said softly, 'I just want to go back to the spiritual world and eat kachori and ladu with Krishna. I just want to go back to the spiritual world and eat kachori and ladu with Krishna.'" Hare Krishna. Srila Prabhupada. So as regards the games the boys played, which we listed, some of them, a good number of these games, again, took place in the Kamyavan forest. And one such place, which many ISKCON devotees know very well, I know the first time I went there, I went with Dinabandhu Prabhu, one of my Parikama gurus, is a hill called Indradyumna Parvata. Indradyumna Parvata. And on that famous hill is a smooth, slippery, how do you describe it? A smooth, slippery depression, a slide for all practical purposes. It's called Bhajana Sheila. You must go there. Bhajana Sheila. You can slide down. And there, Krishna, Balaram, and their friends, they would spend countless hours sliding down this stone and making what one acharya describes as sounds of freewheeling joy. Sounds of freewheeling joy. And a little further up the hill is a mystical stone called the Bhajana Sheila. The Bhajana Sheila. This stone, when tapped, it makes a sound like a drum. Actually sounds like a drum. And the Cowherd boys, 5,000 years ago, they would take great pleasure in playing it and dancing to the beats. So now, I think it's important to mention that although all these games resemble those of ordinary children, they're simple. Ordinary children, they're eager to enjoy themselves in playing these games. But for the Cowherd boys, these games are actually an act of selfless love, meant to please Krishna, by playing with Krishna in intimate friendship. Everything in Vrindavan is very deep. So when the Cowherd boys play with Krishna, it's described by the Acharyas as acts of selfless love to please Krishna in their intimate friendship with him. So this is the nature of these activities, these games. So the Acharyas describe it, one Acharya describes it very nicely. Quote, "The Gopas have no desire or even ability to enjoy playing without Krishna. What gives them pleasure are not the acts of sliding and wrestling or throwing balls, but their success in bringing Krishna happiness." Very nice description. And the games they play are forever. Forever youthful and forever playing games. That's the Cowherd boys. When I read that, it reminded me of a famous personality in America. His name was Benjamin Franklin. He wrote one time, "We do not stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. We do not stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing." Hare Krishna. Now, at the end and near the top of this famous hill, Indradyumna Parvata, is a cave where the demon Vyomasura, we all know Vyomasura. Vyomasura, disguised as a Cowherd boy, joined Krishna's playful pastimes with the intention of kidnapping and hiding each Cowherd boy, actually one by one, in a cave. And that exact place where that pastime took place is called Chorya Kela Shnana. Chorya Kela Shnana. And I'll relate that pastime in a little detail. But first, an interesting note, this demon, Vyomasura, he was the last demon that Krishna killed in Vrindavan before going to Mathura on Akura's chariot. These details are important. This demon Vyomasura was the last demon Krishna killed in Vrindavan before going to Mathura with Balarama on Akura's chariot. So that's a monumental moment in Vrindavan history. Krishna's departure, so much has been written about Krishna's departure from Vrindavan. You can imagine, the Brajabasis are so attached to him and he's leaving. It's a monumental moment in Vrindavan history. And as I was reading, studying, because when I read that Vyomasura was the last demon killed in Vrindavan, and Krishna left the next day, I thought I'd read a little bit about Krishna's leaving. And Krishna's departure from Vrindavan is described by our acharyas as more painful than the pain experienced by the demons when they are killed by Krishna. Krishna's departure from Vrindavan is more painful than the pain experienced by the demons when they are killed by the Lord. You know, that's how Krishna's departure is seen in Vrindavan. Painful for who? painful for the devotees and painful for Krishna as well. I found one episode that one time a traveler passed through Vrindavan on his way to Dwarka, and taking advantage of this, the gopis composed a letter to Krishna, which the traveler delivered to Krishna in Dwarka. And here's the letter, here's the gopis' letter. We can understand how difficult it was when Krishna left Vrindavan. They wrote him, "O Hari, why is it that the soothing moonlight and the gentle breezes caressing the glittering shore of the Jamuna cannot cool the intolerable pain of separation scorching our hearts?" This is Vrindavan. "O Hari, why is it that the soothing moonlight and the gentle breezes caressing the glittering shore of the Jamuna cannot cool the intolerable pain of separation scorching our hearts?" So that's how the gopis were feeling. But how was Krishna feeling? Love is a two-way street, quote unquote. So when Krishna heard these words, it's said that he began to sigh uncontrollably. Krishna sighed. And the scriptures say that seeing his distraught condition, the Dwarka queens, feminine pride, evaporated in the way that the morning mist dissipates with the sun's appearance. Because they could understand how much the Brajabasis loved Krishna. Shri Vrindavan Dham Ki. That last quote was from one of our favorites, Padyavali. So now, this Vyomasura, he had a special mystic power where he could fly at very high speeds. And his plan was to go to Vrindavan, disguise as a cowherd boy, kidnap Krishna's boyfriends, and hide them in that cave we mentioned. He reasoned that by stealing the cowherd boys, Krishna would be disheartened and therefore easier to kill. That was the whole plan. Krishna would be disheartened and therefore easier to kill. So on the day it happened, Krishna and his friends were grazing their cows along the slopes of this hill, Indradyumna Parvata. So Vyomasura appeared amongst the boys in his disguise, and while the boys were absorbed, in all those games, he secretly kidnapped each boy one after another and hid them away in the cave. And when this was done, he blocked the entrance to the cave with a huge boulder. So Krishna soon figured out what was happening. The boys were disappearing one by one. And an interesting note that because he had already killed the Keshi demon earlier that day, he was very short-tempered that afternoon. So at one point, as Vyomasura was carrying away yet another cowherd boy, Krishna just grabbed him by the neck. And when he grabbed him by the neck, Vyomasura assumed a gigantic form. I was reading, it even scared the demigods. But he was unable to free himself from the Lord. So then Krishna tightened his grip, and he threw Vyomasura on the ground so hard that the entire earth shook. So much that the cows that Krishna was tending, they lost their footing. But the demon lost his life. So then Krishna smashed the boulder that was blocking the cave's entrance. And to give the cowherd boys assurance, he went up to each one of them and gave them a very warm embrace. These cowherd boy pastimes are really nectar. So, Srila Bhaktivinoda Thakur explains that Vyomasura represents, quote, the propensity to speak lies and to steal the property of others, unquote. Both of which we know are great obstacles to cultivating pure devotion and developing love for Krishna. Bali Maharaj, he says in Srimad Bhagavatam, 8th canto, 20th chapter, verse number 4, quote, There's nothing more sinful than untruthfulness. Because of this, Mother Earth once said, I can bear any heavy thing except a person who is a liar. And in the Srimad Bhagavatam class, January 21st, 1974 in Honolulu, Prabhupada said, and I quote, nowadays, truthfulness is a dream only. There is no truthfulness. Everyone, beginning from the president down to the ordinary man in the street, no one is truthful. And the Srimad Bhagavatam confirms this, actually. The 12th canto, 2nd chapter, verse number 1. There's that very famous verse. Then, O king, religion, truthfulness, cleanliness, tolerance, mercy, duration of life, physical strength, and memory will all diminish day by day because of the powerful influence of the age of Kali. Now we have that verse we can realize very early on in our Krishna consciousness. Some verses it'll take us some years or maybe lifetimes to realize, but that verse we can understand. Everything is diminishing in the age of Kali. And that is why, because truth, particularly we're talking about truthfulness here, diminishing, that is why to maintain some semblance of sanity in Kali Yuga, there has to be a Brahminical order of men and women who speak the truth at all costs. Samudamas tapas socham shantir arjavam evacha jnanam viganam ashtikyam brahma karma svabhavajam. Another famous verse from Gita. Peacefulness, self-control, austerity, purity, tolerance, honesty, knowledge, wisdom, and religiousness. These are the natural qualities by which the Brahmanas work. Of course, that's difficult in Kali Yuga to find such Brahmanas, because Kalo Sudra Sambhava, Shastra states, in this age of Kali, everyone's a Sudra. However, our Srila Prabhupada defied logic and reason and miraculously made Brahmanas out of people less than Sudras, Balechas and Yavanas. So that will go down in history one day as one of the most remarkable phenomena of the modern world, how Prabhupada did that. Yata kancha natam yati kamsham rasa vida nataha tata diksha vida nena dvijatam jayate nunam. Quote, as bell metal is turned to gold when mixed with mercury in a alchemical process, so one who is properly trained and initiated by a bona fide spiritual master becomes a Brahmana immediately. So actually Prabhupada stated that one of his desires in coming to the West was to train students to become Brahmanas, to speak the truth. Now, it's said that because Vyomasura, this is interesting, because Vyomasura was the son of a Brahmana, his father's name actually was Maya. Krishna thought it necessary to atone for the killing of the son of a Brahmana. Krishna thought like that. I've killed the son of a Brahmana, so I will set the example that I will atone for killing the son of a Brahmana. So there at Charna Kailashtana, he performed a sacrifice. Actually, Madhu Mangal, he performed the sacrifice because he's the Brahmin boy. So now the Acharya, at that point, I was reading that the Acharyas, they posed the question, how did Vyomasura attain the good fortune of being killed, liberated actually, directly by the Lord? I mean, not all demons get that mercy. Most don't. So the Acharyas, they posed this question. Perfect questions, perfect answers, as always in Krishna consciousness. So how did Vyomasura attain this good fortune? Well, seek and ye shall find. And the answer is that in his previous life, he had been a king in Varanasi by the name Maharaj Bhimarata. Maharaj Bhimarata. And eventually, Maharaj Bhimarata left his kingdom, like we read that kings do for the purpose of self-realization, very noble. And he retired to the Malaya Hills to perform austerity for 100,000 years. Unfortunately, he became extremely proud of his devotional progress and the mystic powers that he attained. And one day the great sage Pulastya Rishi and his disciples, they visited this former king's ashram in the mountains. And the king, thinking himself equal to this illustrious sage in spiritual advancement, didn't show the sage any respect. So Pulastya Muni, he said, addressing him as a king actually, "O king, since you do not know right from wrong, and since your devotion is as fickle as the blowing wind, may you be born as a demon." O king, since you do not know right from wrong, and since your devotion is as fickle as the blowing wind, I like that part, and since your devotion is as fickle as the blowing wind, may you be now born as a demon. So, as we often hear, when someone's cursed like that, and they have, "No, please," they tell the person who's cursing them. So, this the king, he immediately begged for forgiveness. So Pulastya Muni assured him that okay, you're remorseful, so I assure you that even though you will be born as a demon, you will die at the auspicious hands of Sri Krishna. That's the hard way out of this material world. The easiest way, chant, dance, and take prasadam by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy. Anyway, it's said that upon his death, the soul of Vyomasura, because we described how Krishna killed him, entered into Krishna's body, just as, quote, a lightning flash merges into a dark cloud, unquote. So in this way, Krishna liberated Vyomasura from material existence. Now another question comes up. We may wonder how, after renouncing everything and engaging in austerities like for such a long time, a devotee like Bhimarata would have strayed so far from the path of devotion as to ignore a great sage. So how did that happen? So the acharyas say that even if one practices devotional service for a very long time, if he does so alone, it's dangerous. The safest way, they say, and we know, is to always stay in the company of devotees. You're safer like that, much safer. Lord Chaitanya has taught us that principle, that no matter how advanced we are, the company of devotees, how shall I say, is compulsory. In Chaitanya Charitamrita Madhya Lila 2283, Krishna Bhakti Janma Mula, Haya Sadhu Sangha, Krishna Prema Janme, Tenho Punya Mukhya Anga. Tenho Punya Mukhya Anga. Quote, this is a really important verse. By associating with sadhus and gaining their mercy, one can get Krishna Bhakti up to the stage of Krishna Prema. Furthermore, a practitioner's very life depends on the association of the sadhus. Without sadhu sangha, it is not possible to receive the seeds of bhakti. So, after killing Vyomasura, Krishna, he sat with Balarama, it's described, to share a meal. at a very sacred place called Bhojana Tali. We have to go there, Bhojana Tali. In the confusion of being kidnapped, however, the Gopas' lunch packs were either lost or spoiled. And hungry from their ordeal, the Cowherd boys, they sat, empty-handed and downhearted, it's written. So Krishna, well aware that his uncle Akrura was already approaching Nandagram to take him to Mathura, and that this meal would be his last meal with the Cowherd boys, Krishna decided to make it a memorable one, something they would never forget, memorable. So the acharyas say that he invoked his potency of maintenance. It's called poshana. Krishna invoked his potency of maintenance, poshana, and he manifested such a variety and quantity of food, especially milk products, that for a moment his friends were speechless. And then they served themselves huge portions of the foodstuffs. And what did they do? They talked about Krishna's latest heroic feat in killing Vyomasura. So there's Krishna and Balaram, eating, and there's the Cowherd boys eating, when suddenly Balaram spilled his kheer, we could say sweet rice. And to the amazement of the Cowherd boys, it flowed over a big stone and created a lake now known as Kira Shagara. Like, Sagar means ocean, but you can also take like lake. Shira Shagar, this ocean, or this lake of kheer, or sweet rice. So that stone is famous as Bhojana Tali stone. The area is called, the holy place is called Bhojana Tali, and that the actual stone is called Bhojana Tali stone. And it still bears the mark of that spilled milk, or kheer, sweet rice. There's different versions. So that stone also has the impressions of Krishna's tali, meaning his plate, surrounded by a number of impressions of several bowls. This is there from one of Krishna's previous visits, it's described. So therefore tali, Bhojana Tali. So you can see the impression of Krishna's plate and the different cups, as well as this white streak from when Balaram spilled his kheer. And I've been there, of course, many times. The first time I went there was with Dinabandhu. He likes to go there. Dinabandhu Prabhu is like my Parikama guru. And we've seen on many occasions hungry pilgrims who visit this holy place of Bhojana Tali. They go to that stone and they fill the impressions of Krishna's plate and the cups with varieties of sweets. And they sit down and they offer them to Krishna and Balaram. They have an artik, and then they take the sweets off the plate, the stone, and they happily eat the remnants. Yes, so as the Gopas were enjoying their feast, joking and feeding one another, on the opposite side of the hill, the gopis were trying to attract Krishna's attention with a music festival in a clearing, in a little forested area called Kalavata. The gopis were dancing and singing, and it's described with such artistic kalavat. Artistic Sanskrit is kalavat, grace. That's how the forest got its name, Kalavata. That the sound of their voices and ankle bells while dancing and singing forcibly drew Krishna away from his friends. He's with the boys, they're eating, but there's the gopis, they have this music festival, and their voices and ankle bells just drew Krishna away. Somehow he escaped. And so Krishna was very pleased to have the gopis' company. However, as the sun started to set, it was time to return to Nandagram. So the acharyas say that with a heavy heart, he was forced to leave the gopis, went back to his friends, he gathered them and all the cows together, and then Krishna and the cowherd boys and the cows, they set off for Nandagram before it got dark. On what the acharyas say should have been a joyous occasion. Usually when they're going back home that afternoon or evening, it's a very joyous occasion. It should have been, full of laughter, singing, mooing of cows, the sound of the flute. But the acharyas say that although the laughter, the singing, and the mooing was there, the sound of the flute was missing. Because Krishna's heart was so heavy with sorrow at the prospect of leaving Vrindavan the next morning that he was unable to lift his flute to his lips. What to speak of playing any joyful tunes? Now the cowherd boys, they assumed that Krishna's sadness was due to separation from his favorite gopi, Srimati Radharani. But Balaram, he knew the real reason for Krishna's sadness, because tomorrow they were going to leave Braj for Mathura and then on to Dwarka. So it's so nicely described that all the way back to Nandagram, understanding Krishna's sadness, Balaram kept a comforting hand on his brother's shoulder. This is like my favorite part today. Balaram kept a comforting hand on his brother's shoulder. Hare Krishna. Whew. So I have to finish today, but I'd like to finish with the following prayers. In that mood of Krishna's leaving Vrindavan, because that's what we got to today. Krishna's leaving Braj, so that's the final mood. We discuss many different moods. All those moods we worship from a distance, but we pray one day that they will inundate our hearts. So the final mood is here is all these wonderful pastimes, taking prasadam and being with the gopis, and next day Krishna has to leave. So I found a few corresponding prayers. This is the proper way to end today. So the first one is from Srila Jiva Goswami's Gopal Champu, Uttara section, part 3, verse number 20. O Lord of our lives, today you are entertaining thoughts of accomplishing the death of Kamsa and accepting the monarchy of Mathura. How will your return to Braja then ever be possible? We think it will be impossible. Therefore, kindly do one last thing for us. In the various desire-fulfilling holy rivers and lakes around the city of Mathura, please remember us and send us a gift of 3 palms of water. Now I'm going to explain those 3 palms of water, but let's let that verse enter very deeply in our hearts. This is the Brajabasis, and particularly the gopis. They're thinking, how are we going to go on without you? So Krishna's about to leave Braj, so they're saying to him, O Lord of our lives, today you are entertaining thoughts of accomplishing the death of Kamsa, because Krishna is going to go on to kill Kamsa, and accepting the monarchy of Mathura. How will your return to Braj ever be possible? We think it will be impossible. Therefore, kindly do one last thing for us. In the various desire-fulfilling holy rivers and lakes around the city of Mathura, please remember us and send us a gift of 3 palms of water. Now, Jiva Goswami says there's a secret behind this verse. And that is, not so secret, but a subtle meaning here. Gifts of 3 palms of water are sent only to the dead, in the form of oblations. There's a ceremony like that. So the gopis are indirectly saying that as soon as you, Krishna, go away, we will die. You did not fulfill our desires while we were alive, so at least fulfill one desire when we die. Please remember us and send us a gift of 3 palms of water. Wow. Hare Krishna. So the next verse is from Padyavali. Gokul asya tu yashobha, danya madhupara gata. Ashmakam hridayam yatra, gokulam vyakula yate. The gopis said, the glorious splendor of Gokula, meaning Krishna, has left today for Mathura. The Gokula, where our heart resides, is now experiencing great perplexity. So an Acharya gives a subtle meaning here. The term Gokul has been used twice in this verse. The first Gokul means, of course, the village of Gokul. And the second Gokul means Kula, the network of Go senses. Kula, the network of Go senses. So the gopis are saying that their Gokula, their network of senses, where their heart resides as the center, is now experiencing great perplexity. So, one more verse. Krishna went to Mathura. We know those pastimes. Then he ended up in Dwarka. We mentioned one time when we were speaking about Dwarka that he spent most of his time actually in Dwarka, on this earth. And this is a verse uttered by Krishna when he was in Dwarka, because we can see how much the devotees are missing him, but how much is Krishna missing the devotees? So I was reading that when Krishna is speaking this verse, he's crying, remembering Mother Yasoda. So Krishna says in Dwarka, now who will take the half-chewed betel nuts from her own mouth and place them in mine? Now who will subdue me with sweet words when I depart from the path of righteousness? Now who will say, come here, wave her arm, place me on her lap, and retie my peacock feather when it falls due to playing around in Braj. So that's Padyavali, verse number 338. Now the import is that in Dwarka, nobody will dare to feed him, Krishna, the remnants of whatever betel nuts they're chewing. No one will tell him when he's acting, like wayward in life. Nobody will even place him on their lap and give him the love like Mother Yashoda could give. And it was Krishna who made the decision to go to Dwarka. Therefore, the Acharyas say that he's crying while he says that in Dwarka. Kind of sad. Of course, we know that it all leads to increasing the intensity of loving mood for Krishna, and Krishna for his devotees. But I was reading that in Gaudiya Vaishnavism, there's a concept called Madhu Rena Samapayat. I was very happy to discover this. There's a concept called Madhu Rena Samapayat. Literally translated, it means finish sweetly. Finish sweetly. Sometimes in my lectures I've said, we should finish on a high note. That's a Western concept. This is more our culture. This is a Gaudiya Vaishnavism. This is who we are. This Gaudiya Vaishnava concept, that's much better. Madhurena Samapayat, finish sweetly. And when I read that, then I came across a room conversation of Srila Prabhupada in July 5th, 1971, which points to the same thing. This is what Prabhupada said. Indian dishes, especially in Bengal especially, Prabhupada says, the shukta is the beginning. Sak and shukta. Beginning vegetable and shukta in the beginning. And at the end, milk, banana, sweet. Eating, beginning bitter, ending sweet. Madhurena samapayat. All kinds of tastes. Bitter, sour, pungent, gradually ending in sweet. That is eating. That's how Prabhupada said. So this principle of Madhurena samapayat, finished with sweets, the Acharyas say this is applicable to prasadam, but it's also applicable to Gaudiya Vaishnava katha. Thus, we should end on a sweet note, whether it's prasadam or katha. So, got a little sad there towards the end with the hearing the lamentation of the devotees and Krishna. So, I'll finish with the verse about Krishna coming back to Vrindavan. Madhur, madhur, madhur bhaji, sweet, sweet, sweet. So where did I find that? Lagu Bhagavatamritam. Lagu Bhagavatamritam. It is said, Rathena mataram ghatva danta vakram nihat yacha spashtam padme purane sha Krishna's yokta brajagati. Translation. Having gone to Mathura on the chariot of Akura, and having killed many demons like Dantarvarkya, it is clearly mentioned in the Padma Purana that our dear Lord Krishna returned back to Braj. Lagu Bhagavatamritam. Having gone to Mathura on the chariot of Akura, and having killed all demons like Dantarvarkya, it is clearly mentioned in the Padma Purana that our dear Lord Krishna returned back to Braj. And then he never left, in the sense that he would meet regularly with his devotees there, gopas and gopis. But it was all an uppercut leela. Uppercut leela means that the common people couldn't see him. So therefore, it is said he didn't come back, because people could never see Krishna. But he did come back for uppercut leela, for unmanifest pastimes, which are eternal. And they're even going on there today. So we'll leave you with that, I'm not going to say high note, I'm going to leave you with that sweet note today. And I will do my best to come back in a couple of days with to share some more wonderful pastimes that are described in our scriptures, and especially given to us by the 6 Goswamis of Vrindavan, by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's order. And all that we can only understand by the mercy of our beloved founder Acharya, Srila Prabhupada. So we read his books, we read his purports, we hear his lectures, and we constantly pray for his mercy. So thank you, everyone. Thank you so much. See you in a couple days. Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Shri Krishna Balaram ki, Shri Shri Radha Shama Sundar ki, Vrindavaneshwari Srimati Radharani ki, Krishna Balaram the Cowherd boys ki, Shri Shri Gaur Nitai ki, Shri Mayapur Dham ki. The chanting of the holy names, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, ki jai. Jai Jai Sisi Radhe Sharma.